During the 100 Years' War, the English monarchy was often seen as the embodiment of divine right. But in the mid-15th century, the crown was in chaos. Feuding nobles saw their chance to take advantage of a weak king suffering from mental illness. As rival factions battled for supremacy, kings were crowned and deposed in a bloody civil war known as the Wars of the Roses. Hello, and welcome to this channel. Today, we'll look at one of the most dramatic episodes in English history, the Wars of the Roses. When Henry VIII died in 1422, he left behind a kingdom on the verge of collapse. His son, the 6-year-old Henry VI, was too young to rule, so his widow, Isabella of France, acted as regent during his minority. Meanwhile, England's coffers were drained from decades of fighting the 100 Years' War with France. And though peace was restored in 1429 with the Treaty of Arras, the country's economy remained in sharp decline. In these dark days, a group of wealthy landowners known as the nobility began taking matters into their own hands, chipping away at the authority of the monarchy. The growing unrest gave way to one of the bloodiest dynastic conflicts in England's history, the Wars of the Roses. Though the phrase itself didn't appear until the Victorian era, historians now use it to describe a series of bitter struggles between two branches of the royal house of Plantagenet, the Lancasters and the Yorks. Each took their name from a flower adopted as a symbol during the Civil War. The Lancasters, followers of Henry VI, used a red rose, while the Yorks followed the white rose. The Lancaster dynasty began with Henry IV, who seized the throne from King Richard II in 1399. Richard's cousin, the Yorkist claimant, was the first to adopt the white rose as a badge. In the 1450s, the growing discord culminated in an all-out bid for the crown. On August 2, 1455, an army of Yorkshire men led by Richard, Duke of York, invaded northern England in a bid to depose Henry VI. The following month, the two armies met at the Battle of St. Albans, where the Yorkists triumphed over the Lancastrians. But despite the initial Yorkist victory, the war would rage for another 32 years. For the next few decades, England was torn apart by a brutal series of struggles that claimed countless lives. In 1460, Richard, Duke of York, forced Henry VI to sign the Treaty of London, which declared that York would become the heir apparent to the throne. However, this treaty was short-lived. By 1461, York had landed back in England at the head of a rebel army. The Lancastrians were routed at the Second Battle of St. Albans, and York entered London in triumph. He was crowned king on July 2, 1461, but York's reign was marred by ongoing conflict with the Lancastrians. In 1462, Henry VI escaped captivity and raised a new army. With the help of Queen Margaret of Anjou, he won several battles against the Yorkists and recaptured London. But York was able to rally his supporters and return to the capital in 1465, forcing Henry to flee once again. The Lancastrian cause soon found new life when Edward IV died unexpectedly in 1467, and his brother, George, Duke of Clarence, seized the throne. George was accused of plotting to marry the young Henry VII, despite being married to the king's sister. After only 9 months, George was beheaded on the orders of his brother, Edward IV, who reclaimed the crown. Though England was nominally under Yorkist control, the Lancastrians continued to wage war against them. In 1469, Queen Margaret led a major invasion of Yorkshire, where she captured the city of York. Soon after, the city fell back into Yorkist hands, but the Lancastrians still held much of northern England. A few years later, an uneasy truce was established with the Treaty of Picarden. Under its terms, Henry VI was to be replaced by Edward IV's eldest son, but the young prince's mother, Elizabeth Woodville, had him secretly married to Lady Anne Neville, daughter of the Earl of Salisbury and granddaughter of the former Duke of York. The marriage was a political masterstroke, uniting Edward's family with the most powerful of the Yorkist faction. Not surprisingly, the bride's father, Richard Neville, Earl of Salisbury, was rewarded with the title Baron Bergaveni, and made the keeper of the royal household. But his brother, John Neville, Marquis of Montague, opposed the marriage and fled to France with other discontented Yorkists. Meanwhile, the dispossessed Queen Margaret made her way to Scotland, where she secured the support of King James II. Together, they planned to invade England and reclaim the throne for Henry VI. While the Yorkists were preparing for the coming conflict, Edward IV suddenly died of the sweating sickness in April 1470. He was succeeded by his 12-year-old son, Edward V, and Elizabeth Woodville acted as regent during the minority. But before long, the throne was in jeopardy once again. Backed by the Scots, Margaret and her allies launched an invasion of northern England. Elizabeth fled to London, but the citizens opened the gates to Margaret's army. Realizing that he could not hold on to the throne, Edward V fled to Normandy. Elizabeth and her supporters rallied in the capital, calling for the return of Edward V, while Margaret had Henry VI crowned king in a makeshift ceremony at St. Paul's Cathedral. But soon enough, Edward V was back in England. With the help of the Yorkist nobles, especially Richard Neville, Elizabeth was able to raise an army and drove the Lancastrians out of the city. Returning to France, Margaret sought the aid of Louis XIV in a new bid to restore Henry VI. Though Louis was initially reluctant, he eventually agreed to assist the Lancastrians. The following year, a Franco-Scottish army landed in Hampshire and marched toward London. Despite being outnumbered, the Yorkists were victorious at the First Battle of Tewkesbury in 1471. Most of the Lancastrian leadership was killed, including the young Henry VII. Queen Margaret and her son were taken to London, where they were imprisoned in the Tower of London. A year later, Henry VI died, and Margaret was forced to watch as her son was killed before her eyes. Then, she herself was beheaded on the orders of Edward V. Richard Neville, Earl of Salisbury, was the last of the great magnates of the Yorkist faction to die. He had managed to survive the fall of the House of York, but he perished in 1471 at the siege of the Kentish town of Canterbury, which was loyal to the Lancastrians. With the throne secure, Edward V consolidated his power by crushing any remaining resistance to his rule. Throughout the rest of his minority, the young monarch proved himself to be energetic and athletic, delighting in hunting and hawking. But in 1483, when he was 17, he, too, died of the sweating sickness, leaving his 12-year-old brother, Richard III, on the throne. Richard III proved to be a capable monarch, pushing back French incursions in northern England. But there was growing discontent among the people over his decision to increase taxes in order to finance his wars. There was also tension between Richard and his brother's widow, Elizabeth of York, who believed that her son, Henry Tudor, rightful heir to the throne according to the terms of the Treaty of Pickardin, should succeed Richard instead. On June 22, 1485, Henry Tudor landed in Wales with a small army of no more than 5,000 men. Richard's forces were more than twice his size, but they were weakened by the fact that many of his nobles had gone on pilgrimage to the shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham. As Richard's troops hurried back to confront the Tudor threat, Henry advanced into England, winning the support of discontented nobles along the way. By early August, the two armies were facing each other near Market Harborough. The following day, August 22, 1485, they clashed at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Despite being outnumbered, Henry Tudor's forces prevailed. Richard's army was routed, and he himself was killed in the battle. His body was exhumed from its grave and displayed on the wall of a Leicester church with a mock crown of red roses placed on his head. Henry Tudor was proclaimed king. Later that year, he married Elizabeth of York, combining the warring houses of Lancaster and York in a single dynasty. In doing so, he established the Tudor dynasty, which would rule England for over a century. Henry went on to enact sweeping changes to the English monarchy, instituting a system of centralized rule that would have a lasting impact on the nation's history. More videos on the Wars of the Roses and the Tudors are available below. Thanks for watching.